and welcome to the Behavior Education Connection, the podcast that works to connect the world of behavior analysis and the world of education. We focus on topics important to behavior analysts who work in the public schools and those who support them. Join us and spend time gaining insights and ideas as our host talks with fellow behavior analysts as well as other experts in the field.
Hello, welcome back to the Behavior Education Connection. I'm your host, Dr. Selena Layden, and I am joined by two wonderful guests today. I have Allison Kelly. Hi, Allison.
Hi.
And Andrea Kearney. Hi, Andrea.
Hello there.
So I'm excited to have both of you on today. So could you tell us a little bit about who you are? And Andrea, if you would go first.
Sure. So I am Andrea Kearney, and I am in Virginia Beach City Public Schools in the state of Virginia. I am a school-based BCBA, but I serve a central office administrative role. I am the coordinator of behavior intervention, and I oversee a growing group of school-based BCBAs. We are up to 34 positions now.
Wow, you have a lot of school-based BCBAs. That's awesome.
Yes, we do.
Great. And Allison?
Hi, I'm Allison Kelly. I work for Roanoke County Public Schools in Virginia. I am a school-based BCBA, primarily working with the preschool program in my school division. I also provide supervision to any of the RBTs or trainees that come into the division. And that is what I do.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you both for being here today. So, the topic that we're going to talk about is onboarding. And so, when people come into a new position, there's all the stuff to learn, right? And we've all been in schools, and so when you're onboarded into a school, there's stuff you have to do like I will never forget having to take bloodborne pathogens training or security training or, hey, don't click on that really suspicious link in your email training that we have to do, I feel like, every year now. But there's other training or supports that we need to put in place that actually help us to do our job. And so that's kind of what we're talking about today. So tell me a little bit about, first of all, why do you think onboarding is important?
So I can start. This is Andrea. I think that it's a very unique role. And at least in Virginia Beach, we started small but mighty, I say, with just 3 of us. And we've really had the chance over about 14 years to grow and kind of shape how our department runs. And that includes the onboarding component. So I appreciate that I have kind of had a lot of control over that. And so we just feel strongly that layering in a lot of information about how to be successful helps our school-based BCBAs make those connections as they're out there in schools doing the work.
Hi, this is Allison. I would also say that onboarding is an opportunity for us to apply our science to work. Our opportunity to provide the materials and resources and training for the people who are doing behavior analytic work in our school divisions. So we are developing this in our school division. I personally have a lot of interest in organizational behavior management and creating systems so that people can do their jobs well, in particular with the behavior analysts that are coming in. And this year we have 2 new ones coming in, so there will be 5 of us.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, so that's why this onboarding conversation is really important to me.
I really connect with that because I feel like that's where I kind of saw our journey. You know, when we were small, we didn't have as many formal systems and structures. We dedicated some time to onboarding, but it wasn't what it is now. So I think you're in a perfect position to really reflect on this as you're looking at that growth happening right now.
And we all know that sometimes moving from the clinical to the school-based BCBA, it's very different. And my hope is that we keep the people that come into our school divisions. And I think onboarding is one piece of keeping them if we do that well.
For sure. remember when I first started in my very first public school job, they had never had a BCBA before. They kind of knew what it was. Like they knew the letters and they knew those letters were important, but they didn't really know what to do with me. And I definitely did not have a lot of onboarding. I had the onboarding I mentioned, the bloodborne pathogens training and the HR policies and, all of that. But when it came time to actually go do my job on day one, I really didn't know what to do. And I didn't have someone who could say like, "Hey, this is how you're going to do your job and this is the things that you need to know about." I had to really seek that out myself, which can be really challenging when you're new and you don't know people and you're feeling overwhelmed and all of the things. So I agree. I think onboarding is a really critical activity that needs to occur. Now, that said, what that onboarding looks like, I think, can be very different depending on the role and the location. You all are in two very different school divisions. So, actually, Allison, why don't you tell us a little bit about what your school division is like?
We are a small division. We have about 26 schools. And currently we have 5 behavior analysts.
So you all are kind of out past the mountains. You're in a fairly rural area. I know that Roanoke is like a little city, but it's around you. There's not a lot out there. And so you have probably a fairly diverse population of students that you're serving. And I think it's great that you have 5 behavior analysts for 26 schools. Like that's a pretty good ratio, actually. I know times have definitely changed. But when I first started, I had 75 schools by myself. Now, I didn't serve all of those schools, but there were 75 schools in the division. And like I said, I was the first one that got hired. So it was definitely interesting trying to figure out what that role was going to look like. Um, but Andrea, why don't you tell us a little bit about Virginia Beach?
Of course, we are quite urban in the easternmost part of Virginia. We have 86 schools and centers. 55, I believe, are elementary. So we do provide more intensive layered support at the elementary level. So out of our 34 positions, 30 are work at the elementary level. 2 of those are pre-K program specific. And then we have 4 who support at across all of the secondary schools. So so that model looks like you, Dr. Layden, I had when I started one of 3, I had about 27 schools. And that was a very different looking model than it is now. So at the elementary level, each of our behavior intervention specialists has anywhere between 1 which is great. 1 school assigned, up to 3 to 4. We use some division level data to help support those decisions. And then at the secondary level, they have about 6 to 8 schools. Maybe work a little bit more off of a consultative type of model. And we provide support to all students, and we have a quite diverse student population.
Yeah. So Andrea, tell us a little bit about what does onboarding look like in Virginia Beach? What are some of the things that you've put in place?
Yeah, so like you guys said, there's kind of the traditional HR required onboarding piece. But then within the department, we have devoted it at least ends up being about 3 days. And over time, kind of how Allison and I have talked about, increasing those systems and structures, we've created a handbook. And so that's been a helpful resource that the department can always refer to as needed. And so we really kind of break that handbook down. VABSPAN and the VABSPAN modules are incorporated and how to become a member. So I think getting that connection to additional people outside of our division from the jump is helpful. And so we do that. We also layer in some school-based time, sort of shadowing a seasoned behavior intervention specialist. And we have formalized our more of a mentorship framework. We've always had a layer of a mentorship. It's been a little bit more of sort of partnering with a seasoned specialist. But now we're really building out much more of a formalized framework with a dedicated mentor, which I think is also helpful. So there's a lot of layers to that, those multiple days of onboarding where they meet with the mentor. There's additional onboarding related to Crisis Prevention Institute is what we use. And we really kind of do a slow rollout because we want people to kind of have that information from the start before they're really ready to go out into school buildings.
Yeah, I think that's great. You brought up a couple of points I want to focus in on. I love that you have a handbook, first of all. And not that I think that writing it down makes it all better, but at least you have a central place to go to. So it's not just, well, this is what Andrea thinks, or this is what, so and so thinks. Nope, this is the division guidelines, this is what we follow, and this is good information for you to go back to. I also love that you have like there's some individual time that they spend to do some of the modules that you have for them, and then also pairing them with someone to kind of shadow and see what is it that you're going to do, and meeting people. And I mean, that's one of the things when you work in schools is there's so many people to know, and it just takes a little while to meet them all and kind of understand who they are and what they do and all of those pieces.
And I completely agree. And we try to be intentional, even that they do some of those school contact points at different schools so that you're kind of seeing what this work might look like across kind of different needs that schools might have. Because I think it's very easy to sort of use a handbook or describe what this looks like, but it's just really helpful to see it in action, to see how a seasoned behavior intervention specialist interacts and does those contact points with teachers and supports for de-escalation. And really, I think one of the most helpful things is through all of that, you're seeing how relationships are built with all of those people in your school buildings. And so we've really found that to be a valuable addition.
Yeah, I love all of that. Allison, I know that you all are still kind of at the earlier stages of your journey, but what are some of the things that you've been thinking about?
So I have been thinking about how can we implement the modules from our network? How do we support the new BCBAs coming in with the meeting of new people, the interpersonal skills, the soft skills? Because like you said, we interact with a lot of different people. And one thing that I didn't share earlier about our division is this a little bit about the structure is that each BCBA it serves the general population in certain schools and then also serves a specialized program in the elementary level and then also coaches behavior coaches that are in those general population buildings. So you know there's a lot of different hats,
Hmm.
and I think that's the piece that I find the onboarding can really define. And we do also do some partnering with seasoned BCBAs. So we might have somebody who's already been in a building shadow or come with the new BCBA to their new location and kind of collaborate with that administration and the new BCBA to kind of bridge that gap. But currently, just trying to tap into the network of other BCBAs and see what they're doing, like what Andrea is doing, and see how some of those pieces could be something that we could do as a division as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point. And, not everybody has a VAP span, and I understand that. But I think everybody can have a network. And one of the things that we've talked about on the show many times is, you need to find your friends and finding colleagues who are already doing things or are working through the same problems that you're working through, I think is really invaluable just in ensuring that have someone to talk to and brainstorm with and bounce things off of and learn from and say, have you tried this and did it work? Or why didn't it work? Or what did you learn from this?
And recently, with my conversation with Andrea on the onboarding process, I feel like it was a safe space to just ask questions and share what we both are doing so that we can do it better and different.
Yeah, I love that. So if somebody were in the position that they're like, you know what, we need to start doing a better job onboarding our school-based BCBAs, what advice would you give them?
kind of from experience, I think there are some things that you can have the forethought to do. You can kind of think ahead, but I also think some of that happens organically because of how things go. And so I just think really thinking like we do in our work about kind of bite-sized growth, because I think like Allison's talking about, you're not going to go from not having as much to having all the things, but thinking about what you could do that would kind of get the most bang for your buck in smaller pieces that kind of get you to that ultimate goal as you continue to grow your department as well.
Well, and I'm assuming, Andrea, your onboarding processes have changed as your needs have changed, as the division needs have changed. And so having that flexibility built in to say, this isn't working the way it did one time, or, if we did this, it might work better for people.
Absolutely. And even thinking about just one simple aspect of it, the handbook, every year, my leadership team in the summer goes through the handbook. What were we missing? What did we have to review in our monthly department meetings that was either missing, or we maybe need to go a little bit more in depth or clarify some of those points, even just updated links. So we've now kind of designed that system where we have a formal review process in the summer. We re-release the handbook. Everybody kind of signs off that they've looked at it and reviewed the information. And so absolutely, all of this over the course of about 14 years has happened in these small steps, that have led to that bigger picture.
Well, and I think the other thing I love is it didn't happen in 3 days, right? You didn't sit down and say, we're designing an onboarding process right now, and in 3 days we're implementing it. And I agree with you. There are some things you can have foresight around, right? You have enough experience to know when someone starts, these are things that they're going to have to know about. But then there's also things that you get feedback from people that you're like, oh, I didn't think about the fact that you might not know that when you came in, or I didn't think about this aspect of the job that it would require, some attention to, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. And I think that's why it also really helps to have those diverse eyes looking at this process, because like I'm not out there in the schools doing this the same way that I was a few years ago. And so having the people who still have that lens, I think is another kind of helpful point, that it's not just me creating a lot of this, or revising. It is a team of people who are doing a lot of different kind of, covering a lot of different aspects of the work, because even our secondary, that's the secondary behavior intervention specialist, that's a bit of a different lens, that's a bit of a different approach to the work. And so there are some nuances within onboarding and mentorship and just kind of continuing with the work that are secondary specific versus elementary.
Yeah.
I think I hear you guys bringing up a really good point, is that this process of onboarding is a team approach. So, the fact that I might reach out to Andrea to kind of spark my thinking, she's a teammate in the process, even though she's not with me. And then going to my colleagues and having them join me in the process. I can't do this by myself, though I might be very interested in it. Um, it has to be more than one person involved. So I think team is really critical to going through the onboarding process.
I love that. And one of the things I think about, when we work with kids, we don't want them to become dependent upon one person, right? We don't want them to only look to a specific teacher or paraprofessional or whoever that may be. I think adults are the same way, right? We want to be a safe space and a support for our colleagues, but we want to make sure that they have other supports built in too, because someday you may be sick one day, or you may have a meeting that you're in and you can't answer a question. So who else can they go to? And so I think you're right, having that team approach, not only in the development, but in the implementation of it is really important.
Along that same lines, we've also built out sort of a departmental expertise, so that each department member can kind of identify themselves. If you're really strong with creating visual supports, or you're really strong with our early childhood population, so that now the department has their sort of formal mentorship, but we also have all of those more kind of subtle because it's kind of naturally occurring mentorship opportunities that I think also helps grow people's skills in different ways. And I look at VAPSPAN the same way. Like, we're identifying people sort of across the state as they could be sort of our go-to people. And I have quite a few of my department members who are in VAPSPAN, who are serving on committees. And so they're, kind of layering in, okay, I connected with this person, so I might not have heard about them. I might not know their expertise, but I have a lot of department members. So it's this collective brain power that I think is really powerful, with the networking, both within department, but also on a larger scale.
Yeah, and I really like that. And especially for our folks who are by themselves, or maybe there's two of you in a division or your district. And I mean, you can't be good at everything, right? We have to wear a lot of hats, and there's a lot of things we have to have competency in, but we can't be great at everything. And so leaning on others who do have expertise in certain areas is really helpful. And so finding people that you can connect with and discuss with. I remember when I came out of grad school and I started in my first job, I kept in touch with people I went to grad school with who were also in schools, and was like, what are you doing about this? I don't know how to fix this. So that I had those people to lean on. But, having a network of colleagues is really, and especially a network of colleagues who do what you do, is really important. So I 100% agree with that. And I think part of the onboarding process really should be making those connections for people, or at least starting to make those connections for people. All right. Well, I think we've had a really good conversation. Is there anything else that you want to share with our listeners?
I think I would say just really thinking about it's not about what you should do or what you want to do. To me, it's really about what's needed. And so really kind of, leaning into what especially your new people need to be successful is just the approach that I would recommend.
Great. Allison, anything from you?
I would say if you're nervous about the process of onboarding, don't be. Reach out to the network of other BCBAs that might already be doing it, and reach out to the team that you're working with, and start the process.
Yeah, I think those are both great final thoughts. So, Allison, Andrea, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, we will see you on our next episode.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Behavior Education Connection. Join us next time for another great conversation about behavior analysis in the schools. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on an episode. Sending out a special thanks to the Virginia Department of Education for supporting our work. We look forward to connecting with you all again soon.